Hello, everyone. This is my brief presentation about Standard 9, Professional Learning and Ethical Practice. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about how my practice and professionalism is related to ethics, standards, and laws, understanding cultural and ethnic, gender, and learning differences, my responsibility for learning, how I use data to evaluate outcomes, and professional learning experiences. First, I'm going to talk about how in my practice, I strive to be a professional, both ethical and within the laws or expectations. And for me, this really works as being in an international school. But I feel by being ethical means that I have to abide by the mission and values, the philosophy of the schools and the programs that I run. So some of the examples of how I feel that I teach in relationship to the vision statement of my school here at ISE is in the mission statement. They talk about preparing students to become adaptable, lifelong learners, and understand that they have global responsibilities. And you can see in the lessons that I teach that I will incorporate various ways of understanding that students need to understand their role as an individual, their role in smaller communities, larger communities, and then in the world. And this is my job as a professional. And I believe it's ethical also that, and almost even moral maybe, that we get to the point of showing students an understanding of how the world works. This also means that I have a commitment to the IB philosophy, which is very related to our school's philosophy. And this would be in relationship to the IB talking about how it wants to develop knowledgeable and caring young people to create a better world and a more peaceful world through intercultural understanding and respect. And again, I know that ethics sometimes here is involving like, what do you think is right or wrong within the code of the profession? And I think that I'm taking that to a slightly different understanding of what is right or wrong within the role of what an education is supposed to do for students. And you will see in my lessons and the requirements that I have to do for unit planning and instruction have to be shaped around the vision statement and the mission statement for both my school and the IB. In a more traditional sense of ethics, I need to demonstrate academic honesty as a teacher. So when I make presentations or I give students handouts or things that I make, I always cite the sources that I take it from, and I even will make sure that I show them that they know where these kinds of things have been done. And also then my job as a teacher is to teach them how to be academically honest, and what ethical practices are within that. I don't really have to follow any national laws or U.S. laws in relationship to student privacy. However, we basically do everything we do under FERPA. I recently had an IEP meeting. We will discuss things. This is all confidential information. There's no sharing other students' information with other parents. We don't talk about this outside, right? And then also the type of way I deal with personal information about students in general within the classroom, keeping in mind that families have a right to privacy about what's going on within their own students' academic and personal world. Also, then I deal with the ISE faculty expectations and responsibilities, the kind of faculty handbook that we get, which states that there are expectations for me as a teacher in the role that I do here, whether it is something like if I'm going to be late for school or I'm going to be absent, to the idea of how I do things with visas and business office communications. All of that kind of stuff within the handbook is obviously something that I have to deal with and do within my responsibilities to be professional and ethical. And then obviously related to academic honesty, I model ethical practice. If I've done something wrong, I admit it to the students. I don't lie. If there's a mistake, I own up to it. I explain how people make mistakes, and then this is a modeling exercise, hopefully, to teach them how to behave appropriately and ethically. Next, I'm going to talk about my understanding of cultural, ethnic, and gender and learning differences. One of the first things I do at the beginning of the school year, and I used this as an example earlier in the course, is I have students make non-linguistic representations of themselves in the first week of school. And I do it too, and I get to know them and they get to know me. And basically, without words, they use images to denote who their identity is. And this often then fosters an understanding of the cultures they come from, how ethnicity affects their identity, potentially gender, and that's the main beginning of the relationship I have with the students. Within the IB program, I need to foster international mindedness. This is a sense that there's respect between cultures, that we don't necessarily, it's not exactly cultural relativism, but it's an understanding of the differences between cultures and how people might have different perspectives on this. It's something that I have to put into my lessons as a teacher within the IB framework. And you can see from some of the lessons that I've taught in this unit about identity and looking at how things might be perceived in terms of what's important and not important to people based on their cultural or ethnic histories. And then throughout some of these lessons, you've seen that I have integrated the students' backgrounds into activities, assignments, and assessments from group work in which I've made homogeneous ethnic or cultural groups to compare to heterogeneous ones and look at the differences that they might have, to fostering an idea of identity in the assessments and having the students use their own personal stories to create an idea of what they want to share about who they are and how that might be viewed by other people. Next is my responsibility for learning. Throughout the series of lessons, basically 8 of them that we've done, I think you've seen any number of ways that I've been taken responsibility for the learning and played different roles. Obviously, I've been a facilitator, a guide, and a mentor as much as possible, looking at what the students need, what the activities are, and then choosing the most appropriate role to do this, whether it's sitting one-on-one and then having the kids get that student go back in to be with their group, if it's me just monitoring the protocols and making sure they're on task, or if I'm actually guiding them, modeling and mentoring through something. One of the ways I feel that I show my responsibility for learning is by creating a particular relationship and learning environment in my classroom. From the fact that I have a very peer or personal attitude developed with the students, and that I try and show mannerisms that are fostering of that environment, getting down to the students' level, not talking down or at them, but with them, treating them as mature as they can handle, and basically fostering a relationship between a student and myself that they can then model and mimic when they're working together. And then I think that I also provide foundational skills development in technology and language, specifically by having them use things like collaborative slideshows or giving multiple presentations, or sometimes I have them make video presentations of things, and then really laying the foundation. Yes, I teach English, but of using the correct language in the correct situations, and modeling academic language, or if students are lower, giving them sentence frames and stems that will develop the language that they need. Next is the use of data to evaluate outcomes. A lot of this for me is generally informal. I have class observations, group observations. I look at particular students individually in classes sometimes. I have individual conferences with students. I use the Google Classroom as a center for all work to be turned in, so everything that they do will show up there so that I can look on it and give them feedback as necessary. It's a focus on formative, and I use it to inform what kinds of observations I will make. I also do look at some standardized test data. Just yesterday I was looking at map data from map testing for my kids to see where they are and how that might drive my instruction. Finally, I do a lot with professional learning experiences. You can see in the past year a number of the workshops that I have attended, and actually currently this year I've already been to a DP coordinators meeting. I've gone to a 3-day workshop in Jakarta, India for IBDP coordination, and then yesterday we had a PD day where I attended workshops for EAL strategies, map testing data, inquiry cycles, and student motivation. I really feel that keeping up with being a professional makes you a better person and a better student and a better teacher, and that's where I put a lot of my focus in developing as I move forward. one of the reasons I've done this program. Thank you.